Welcome to Season 5 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education but feel like they have no options. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach who guides overwhelmed teachers through a 5-step process out of education and into a life they love. I'd like to see a world where the work of teachers is valued and respected, and that teachers have a career pathway that enables them to continue to offer value to society beyond their work in the classroom. So in this season, we'll be speaking with wellbeing experts who can help you to stay well as you plan your exit. If you're almost ready to leave and you need to redo your resume, check out my Resume Revamp digital download. It's a comprehensive guide to making your resume show off your assets. For $49.95 Australian dollars, you'll get pre-filled, eye-pleasing resume and cover letter templates in both US letter and A4 size, a lexicon of teacher terminology with a translation to corporate speak, and a bonus PDF on getting past applicant tracking software. Check out the Resume Revamp package on the product page of larksong.com.au and come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 12. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really pleased to be speaking with multi-award-winning teacher from Sydney, Katrina Harte, who is known as the animated teacher. Welcome to the show, Katrina.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so tell me more. Tell me about being an animated teacher. I'm very curious. So as you know, this season's about planning your exit and maintaining your well-being. So where does that fit in with being an animated teacher?
So for me, I was working full-time as a teacher, but I now have a young family. And so working full-time is just not in the picture for me at the moment. It's, I don't need to tell anyone listening to this podcast that teaching is very full on. And I just felt like I couldn't work full-time and look after my very young family at this point in my life. And so I'm working part-time as a teacher. I do still love the classroom, but I also have it would be my side hustle or the other part of my life, which is the animated teacher. And that involves, I have my YouTube channel, which is the animated teacher, and I create YouTube videos and tutorial videos on chemistry concepts. I also sell my teaching resources, and I also have the animated teacher blog where I blog about topics to try and help support and provide information for teachers, support beginning teachers and teachers who are feeling stressed and teachers who are feeling like they're burnt out, and just trying to, offer some of my wisdom and expertise from my years of teaching as well.
And so I'm sure there'd be people listening who would be really interested in learning more about that. What form does that take?
So when I get time,
yeah,
in amongst my very busy life, I do spend some time creating resources that I sell on Teachers Pay Teachers. And so that provides some income for me that is separate to when I'm working part-time. And I'm hoping that I can build that and sort of supplement my part-time income. I'd love to get it to a point where it would be the equivalent of working a few casual days, which I wouldn't have to do, and therefore I can stay home with my family. And then I guess as well, I also earn income from my YouTube channel now as well. So
wow, okay. So with the supporting the teachers, are you doing any like one-on-one calls or anything like that?
No, so it's more about just an open blog where I share my expertise in that way. I also do sometimes film them and put them on YouTube as well. At my school, I try and help my colleagues that I work with, but no, I'm not doing any sort of one-on-one coaching at this time.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I just thought, because there might be people listening and thinking, oh, that sounds really helpful. So when we finish up this episode, I'll get from you all the links, so we can put all that information in the show notes for this episode. If people want to find you on Teachers Pay Teachers or your resources, they can go and search you out through that. Okay, so let's just kind of backpedal a little bit. Tell me about just briefly your story. Like, what got you into teaching in the first place?
When I left school, I actually when I went to uni, I went to do medical science, and I loved my degree. But at the time, to get me through uni, I was working 5 different part-time jobs, and all of them were teaching based. It was some sort of tutoring or teaching dancing or teaching clarinet, or I don't know, there's all these different teaching things. And I realized that the part of my day I was actually looking forward to was the teaching part. And so I transferred to do science education instead, and got a job straight out of university as a full-time science teacher. And I became head of science at my school in my second year of teaching. That was a very, very steep learning curve. It was a very unusual situation. But I loved that role, and I held that role for 3 years, and then swapped schools and became head of science at another school. And since then I've just, as I mentioned before, I've had kids, and my priorities are a little bit different now. And I still do love the classroom, but I knew that having a young family and working full-time wasn't for me, because when I was working full-time and didn't have the pressures of young kids as well, I definitely went through multiple times where I was very burnt out and really sort of struggled to get through week by week. And so I knew that I had to change something to make it work for me. And that's where I'm at now. So working part-time, also trying to feed my creative outlet, which is my blogging and creating resources, and also making sure I've got time for my kids as well.
Okay, so let's talk about some of those things, because I feel like that's where the meat is going to be in this conversation. How do you maintain your wellness? Obviously you set a boundary around your time. That's one aspect, which is fantastic. If your school allow you to do that, that's a part solution. But what other strategies do you employ to make sure you stay well while you're, juggling all these balls?
Yeah, definitely time management is really important. And I have had to set boundaries, and I've had to get better at saying no to things. I've always in my life, I like to say yes to things, and I've had to learn to say no. And that can be a really hard thing in schools, when people, particularly your superiors, are asking things of you. It is really hard to say no. It's something that you have to practice, and that's definitely something I've learned. And I think the way about going, there's a definite way to say no. So when people ask things of you, even the other day, I'm very swamped at work at the moment, and I was asked to run a professional development session, which I would love to do. That's right up my alley. It's what I'm passionate about. And so this was really hard for me to say no to, but at this time I just knew it wasn't for me. And so I very politely just said, thank you so much for the opportunity. It is definitely something that I am looking forward to doing down the track. But right now, at this time, at this point in this year, it's just not feasible for me. And I'm feeling that I'm already at my capacity. And the response that I got back was, that's fine. Yes, I'll definitely put you on the list for later in the year. And so that was really well received, and I'm really appreciative of that. And I know that not all school leaders are like that, but yeah, it's definitely an art and something I've had to practice, to say no to things, particularly for things that I want to do. I do want to do that. I just know that right now I can't. So that's looking after my own mental health, my own well-being. And the other thing I think is really important, and I also say this for any new beginning teachers too, is it's really important to have a hobby that allows for you to forget about work, forget about your teaching load, forget about the many, many, many little things that are going on around being a teacher. And for me, I've got 2 main hobbies. My first one is woodworking. I love woodworking. When I get on the tools and I am busy with my hands, I'm not thinking about my very, very long to-do list. I'm able to sort of remove myself from that, and I'm still feeling productive, like I'm doing something. I am that sort of a person. I need to feel productive. So that helps me with that as well. So if there's a hobby that you have that sort of helps you to escape, I think that is really important. I do love creating resources, and for my Teachers Pay Teachers store, like that's another, and writing blog posts, I like that creative outlet. So that's another hobby that I enjoy. And it will obviously be different depending on who you are and what you like. And if you don't have a hobby yet, I'd say just try and start something new, whether that be enrolling in a painting course once a week, or just something that's fun and different. I think that gives you some mental space away from teaching, which is really important when you're looking after your well-being.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think I see a lot of teachers where work has become all consuming, and they'll come to me, crying on the first call that we have together. And I'll say, look, your email address that you booked this call with is your school email address, and like they're just totally absorbed in the school environment and haven't really worked out a way to escape. And I know that's what I was like. I was obsessed. So but I had colleagues who had other things that they did on the weekend. Like one guy worked in a bike shop just because I think he just liked bikes. And there was a deputy principal used to run aerobics classes. That was his hobby, really, So I think there's a lot to be said for having a world outside of work that allows you to just not make work the only thing you're thinking about.
Absolutely.
And I was listening to James Clear. He wrote the book Atomic Habits. So I'm listening to the audiobook.
Yeah, I've read that book. It's a good book.
It's a great book. And he talks about acting like the person you want to be, like beginning to actually behave in the way that this. So you ask yourself, like, would a healthy person eat this chocolate eclair right now, or whatever, depending on the context, or would I don't know, I'm trying to think of some virtue, but, would an organized person leave that, cup on the sink, or would they put it in the dishwasher, that kind of thing. So yeah, just asking yourself, if I'm becoming this new person, what kind of behaviors do they exhibit?
Yeah. And it's almost like faking it till you make it, isn't it? I'm just going to pretend that I'm that person that can let go of work. And when you start doing that over and over, even if you're sort of pretending, it actually becomes you, and it's not pretending anymore, because you are that person. You are doing what it is that you set out to do, which I think is, it's definitely part of it's just starting. If you feel like you need to fake it at the beginning, that's okay, because you will get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just like being able to just separate yourself in a way that is still healthy, and practice living that life that you really want. Because when you do get out, if you decide to leave, when you do get out, you're kind of going, oh, what do I do now? Like so many teachers say they just feel lost when they leave, because they don't have this all-consuming thought about work all the time, and they don't know what to do with themselves. So I'd say to people, start practicing now, living the life that you actually want to live. So, all right, enough of that. Tell me, what advice would you give to someone new to the profession who's because one of the things I notice is there's this career pathway that leads to burnout, or at least the teachers that I'm seeing, and the Facebook group's now got over 15,000 people in it. The teachers I'm seeing have had this career pathway where they've worked and done everything they've been asked to do, to the point where they just kind of hit the wall and go, I just cannot do this anymore, I'm done. And it's quite sudden often, and there's an event, like they have a heart attack or something, and then they're done. How would you plan your career pathway as a young teacher?
I think that's a really interesting question, because it is really hard at the beginning. I think because teachers aren't planning their career paths, they're just trying to keep their head above water. And so when they enter the profession, it's so overwhelming. There's so many things that they are trying to keep a handle on. And the progression of the career is probably at the end of, like, at the back of their mind. They're not even thinking about it. What I would say is to have a few goals along the way. There's a lot of people that enter the teaching profession because they feel that they can have a family and they can work part-time, and that's all they want. And that's completely fine. I completely support that. I agree with that completely. And then there's other people that definitely want to get somewhere. I think if you have a really clear map of the sorts of positions that you would like to have throughout your career, and sometimes you don't know that till you're in, like, I didn't know that I wanted to be a head of faculty until I was actually teaching. And then I got a taste of it and I loved it. And I just didn't know that at the beginning of my career. And so I would say, when you're starting out, try and focus on having really good habits in your life, trying to have a really good work-life balance early in your career. Because as you said, it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get harder as you may potentially move up the ladder. You've got more responsibility. There's more people that you're trying to manage as a leader. If you can have a good work-life balance at the beginning of your career and follow that through, then that's going to serve you well later, regardless of where you might like to end up.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So imagine then that you've got a later career teacher who is feeling that overwhelm, feeling burnt out. What might that look like for them? Like, what would be the symptoms of that? How would they know, oh, I'm getting there, I'm near the edge?
There's definitely, I think I've got sort of 7 signs of teacher burnout. And I'm actually publishing a few blog posts on it in the coming weeks. And I think one of the first ones is you start to dread going to work. You know, if you wake up in the morning and the thought of going to work, it's just something you're not excited about anymore. It's something that you just wish you could have called in sick that day. You know, that I think that's definitely a telltale sign that you're starting to feel burnt out. If you no longer find joy in teaching, I think early on, you know, teachers, we love teaching, we love what we do, we love our students. If you're no longer finding joy in the classroom, that's another sign that you're heading towards burnout if you're not already there. And for me, this one is a big one for me. You lose patience with your students quickly. I would like to think of myself as a very patient teacher, and I know that when I'm starting to feel burnt out or overwhelmed, I lose my patience with my students very quickly. And it's something that's very visual for me. Like if I very rarely raise my voice, if I find that I'm raising my voice all of a sudden, that like sort of hits me in the face like, okay, this is not who I usually am as a teacher. So I need to work on something there. If you find yourself withdrawing or not participating in staff room discussion and enjoying time with your colleagues, that's also a sign of burnout. You stop trying to be creative. So, you know, when we're feeling really supported and we're feeling really good in the classroom, often that comes out in teachers' creativity in their lessons. They start creating really great lessons. They try new things. If you are not doing that at all, you don't have any pull to be creative, you just don't even really have the energy to try and engage your students, then I would say that you're probably feeling quite burnt out. If you've lost your sense of humor, if you have one to begin with, I know not all teachers like to teach with a sense of humor, but a lot of us do, particularly I think high school teachers. I don't know how you survive being a high school teacher without a sense of humor, but when you start to, you know, things that you used to find funny and you used to be able to laugh with your kids, and now you're finding that a burden, that's definitely, I'd say that you're definitely feeling like you're burnt out. And the last thing is that if you start to feel like you're letting your students down regularly, and that really does pull at your heartstrings, and you're feeling like you're just not doing the best job that you can be as a teacher, I think all of these signs together is just the picture of someone that's burnt out in teaching. And I think, unfortunately, it's common, but I think it also is really important to be able to recognize these symptoms for what they are and try and do something about it before it gets to the point where you feel that you need to leave the profession, if that's not what you want.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, I think no one who goes into teaching is planning to leave. Like I certainly wasn't. I thought, this is it. I'm gonna love this job and I'm gonna have it for life. And then, you know, it all went pear-shaped, and I stopped loving everything on your list. That was me. I literally did not want to put my feet on the ground in the morning, because I knew the inevitability of, if I do that, then the next step is I'm going to have to get dressed and get ready for work and go to work. And I just started to dread it. And when I started to dread the first day of term 1 on the last day of term 4 the previous year, that's when I knew it's time to get out. And I only taught for 8 years, and I still feel regret, you know, because I think if I'd managed that pathway better, I could have stayed longer. I was always amazed by the veteran teachers who were there for, 20, 30 years. I'm like, how do you guys do this? I just couldn't. I don't know, different mindset, I guess. Okay, so if someone is planning their exit and they need to stay well, What kind of recommendations or suggestions would you have to support that?
Well, I mean, as you said, like there's a lot of teachers that enter the profession and they're not thinking that they do want to leave it initially. And so if you're feeling like you're burnt out, leaving the profession isn't your only option. You definitely have other options. And I think regardless of whether you are on that journey, and as you like we were talking before, just deciding to leave the profession isn't just oh, okay, sweet, I'm out tomorrow. It's a journey, and it might take you 6 or 12 months before you can work out a way that's financially viable for you to leave. And that is a long time to stay in a profession that you're feeling burnt out in. And so I do have some tips that I'd love to share with you about things that can maybe help you to reignite that spark that you initially had for teaching, or at least give you enough energy back to try and make you through until your next journey. I call them my 6 C's. So how to fall back in love with teaching again. My first one is to create something. I think that as people, we are generally quite a creative bunch, particularly teachers, I feel. And I definitely find that, and this is true of a lot of my colleagues, they get energy when they've made something they're proud of. They've created a new activity for their class that they know is going to be really engaging, and they feel proud about that. It's something that they've accomplished. And I think that feeling of accomplishment is something that can get us through. When you're feeling really run down, you're feeling burnt out, often you start to feel like, well, I'm no good at anything. I can't do anything right. And if you could just maybe focus your energy in on just making one lesson something you're really proud of, it can just sort of reignite that spark for you again. So I think creating or trying to be creative, and that might mean that you just create really boring lessons for every other lesson your week. Get the textbook out, make it easy, so that gives you time back in to be able to give you time to create something really nice and really special for your class. My next one is to connect. Try and connect with other teachers who aren't feeling burnt out. Sometimes we are drawn to other people that are also burnt out, but then that can sort of make us both spiral. If you could find someone at your workplace, or it doesn't even have to be at your school, you could be friends with another teacher who's feeling really pumped about teaching, they're excited. If you could try and connect with them and try and get some of their energy rub off on you, that's a really good thing. And that can be something that could just push you through, until you get to your next option, or you can find your way out. But connecting with someone that loves teaching, has still got their flame burning, and is able to, give you some energy and support, that's a really good thing. So create, connect. My third one is to contribute. Try and to contribute to others in the profession. Sometimes we feel like we've sort of lost our way, but you as a teacher, and if you've been teaching a while, you have so much to offer. And if you could impart some of your wisdom, share some of your teaching resources with a colleague, it doesn't even have to be at your school. Like if you're at a school where you don't feel that your environment is particularly healthy, you might want to share some of your resources through social media. There's a lot of Facebook groups out there. These are all ways that you can contribute. And sometimes when you're the one that's contributing, that can really actually help you feel like you're a part of something bigger. And I think that's a really healthy thing as a teacher to have. So we've got create, connect, contribute. The next one is conference. If there is a conference around you, some sort of professional development, I find that leaving my school situation and going to a conference where there's other teachers from other situations, other environments, other schools, people who are excited to learn more, that can often, you get this conference buzz, people are talking about education and what they can do differently, and how and often as well, they will also have sessions about teacher wellbeing. It's such a big thing at the moment. You might be able to draw something from the conference that's going to help you with your own wellbeing, and help you to make it through. But yeah, I think conferences just have this way of providing new ideas and a positive atmosphere that is really healthy for us as educators. The next one is to communicate. So if you're feeling this way, you're feeling burnt out, it's really important that you communicate either if you've got a head teacher or with your administration, if you can pinpoint the things or even just one area that could be just changed slightly, or that you might need some help in to help you get through, communicating that with the people that can actually help you is so important. Don't struggle in it alone. A lot of your leaders and your administration, well, firstly, they've probably been where you are at some point. If you've got a head of faculty or someone that you report to, they probably felt burnt out in their career before, and they would probably want to help you get through yours. But secondly, as well, like your administration, they're there to support you. It might be that you're not comfortable talking to them. Why don't you start talking and communicating with your family, letting them know that you are feeling this way? Is there a way in your family that they can support you to help you get you through this really tough time in your career?
Yeah.
My last one is change. So change may definitely mean leaving the career. It might mean leaving teaching behind. It might not be for you, but there's also change you could do before that if you're not quite ready for it, or if it's not financially viable and you don't exactly know what your next move is. Change could be as simple as asking to change what year group you're teaching. So if you're a primary school teacher and you need something that's just a bit different, maybe ask to change what year group you're on next year. It might put you in a different team with a different team of teachers that you're working with, and that might be enough, just to get you through another year.
That term that your group, the group, what is that term that you just said?
Oh, so if you're teaching, so in Australia, like if you're a primary school teacher, often you're teaching the same stage a few years in a row. So that might be, year 3 and 4 kids. But as a change, you might ask to change and teach year 5 and 6 next year. Right, so it's a different year group. You might then be, you're like teaching buddies on that year group might be different. I'm a high school teacher, so a change for me might be asking that instead of teaching HSC chemistry, I might ask, can I teach physics next year instead? A change in subject. It could be a change in your role. So you could ask if there is a leadership position that you're interested in, or even a slight, like not even a leadership, just a different. So this year, I'm data manager for my school, and that means that I run all of our examinations, so our NAPLAN tests and our COGAT test and PAT test, and there's a lot of different tests that we run, but it's not teaching, but it's still involved in the school, and it's just something a bit different. So that could be a change that is helpful for you. Maybe it takes you out of the classroom a little bit more, but you're still in the school, and it doesn't affect you financially. It could also be that you want to change schools. If that's an option for you, to change the school that you're in, still teaching, but maybe you just need a change of scenery. They say a change of scenery can be as good as a holiday. Maybe that's something you need, even if it is just for 1 year while you're getting all of your other things sorted. And yeah, as I said, like it might be time for you to change altogether. It might be time for you to change careers completely, and to use, teachers are amazing. Teachers are good at so many things. There are so many job prospects that you would be good at. If you've decided that teaching's not for you, then yeah, absolutely start looking for a change.
Wow. That's a great list. I love it.
Sorry, that was a lot.
No, it's really very helpful. And I think you've covered off everything. I feel like you should be writing my book for me. So it's like, these are all the things you can try to make it work for you. But okay, so as we wrap this up, I've got one final question for you. Oh. And I didn't warn you about this, so apologies in advance.
Okay.
What's your favorite song?
My favorite song?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, so I really like this band called Stand Atlantic, and the song that I like the most is called Coffee at Midnight, which may ring true for a few teachers drinking coffee at midnight now that I've said it. But yeah, they're a good band. I like them.
Awesome. Thank you. And is there something in that, like the lyrics or the music? What is it about that song particularly that you like?
It's like a pop punk song. Like it's got a really good beat to it. And yeah, I don't know. I think I love coffee, and I can't think of being awake at midnight without it. So I guess I just sort of relate to it.
Nice. Okay. All right. So Katrina, is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't asked you that you want to add to the conversation before we finish?
No, I mean, I think, I think anyone that's listening to this podcast, you're in the right place. You've obviously got this support, and if you're not already in Elizabeth's Facebook group, definitely join into that to get support in your journey and support from other like-minded teachers and teachers who are struggling. If you're someone who is feeling that you're struggling, but you don't want to leave the profession, that's okay too. I think that, this is such a safe space, and we want to support each other. And that's why I started my the Animated Teacher blog, is to support teachers who are feeling that they're burnt out, or want extra resources and things like that. I think that don't ever feel like because you're changing career, you're failing, because you're not. That is not what it's about at all. And I think that as teachers, we do feel a lot of responsibility for our students, and we can feel so heavily that we're letting them down. But that's just not the case at all. There's other teachers out there, they've got support. And if you're feeling this way, then really the best thing that you can do is start looking after yourself and deciding what your next steps are.
That's such a perfect way to end. Thank you so much for coming on the Get Out of Teaching podcast today, Katrina Harte.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast, presented by Larksong Enterprises, with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. Thanks for listening. If you need more support in your journey out of education, check out larksong.com.au and book a triage call. I'm a career transition coach for educators, and I support teachers in their journey out of education and into a life they love. I've been where you are now, and you don't need to do this alone.